Marco, thank you for joining me today.
It's nice to be a part of your podcast. So thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, I'm so excited. We met through a program we were both in, and now here we are. And I think we just both had a little bit of a conversation before we started that we have common roots. We're both from the former Yugoslavia.
Yeah, it's a small world, isn't it? You even speak a little bit of my language, so that's exciting.
Yes, I keep trying. You'll have to teach me
Yep.
some more. And speaking of your background, I know that is a big part of your story and your history. And for those that aren't familiar, Yugoslavia now is many different separate countries, but it
Yep.
did go through a war. And how old were you when the civil war started in Yugoslavia?
I was 2 years old, so I don't remember it a lot. I could feel it through my parents, like the hyperinflation and the sanctions, and it was like really, really crazy. If you didn't have your grandma and grandpa bringing in the organic food for you to eat, if you were only like supporting your family through a supermarket, you're done. There were lines for oil, for flour, for whatever. So it was crazy. It was under sanctions and everything is. But as I said, I was too young to remember.
Yeah, I don't know how my parents let me do this, but it was 94. I just graduated college and I was backpacking through Europe. And I remember I wanted to see my family. And so I was in Paris. I went through Belgium and stayed with a stranger, flew to Budapest, and my uncle and my cousin took the bus from Belgrade up to Budapest. And then we took it back. And instead of like 4 or 5 hours, it took like 12 hours. There were stops everywhere, guards everywhere. And we finally made it in. And I remember during that time, they were showing me money that was like, had no value. I mean, it
With
literally
15 zeros, right?
yes, like tons of zeros. I don't know if they still kept it, but they were like, none of this is even worth the paper that was written on. And luckily, so many of my family members were farmers. And so they were able to
Yeah,
get by because they could grow their own
absolutely.
stuff. But it was just crazy time. So, how did the war build your character and your resilience, do you think, over the years?
I believe that there is like probably a character that everyone knows nowadays. It's Novak Djokovic, and you can tell that resilience and Ina that he has, and he put it out there perfectly because when you're brought up in such an environment where he's talking more about the bombing that we had, I remember that one in '99. So my whole childhood, it was not like those wars. Or maybe for my older brothers, they remember them better. But for me, it was the bombing when I was like maybe 10 years old, but throughout that whole piece was a big like black hole in the history of this region completely. But I don't know, like call me crazy, but I remember I was 10 years old, the bombing started, and I got a new bicycle. And my mom told me whenever the sirens go off, you need to call back home immediately. And I just got on the bike and it started. The sirens went out. I'm like, come on, not now, because people then were more connected than ever. Like folks in the street, you had seldomly electricity, you would have like for a couple of hours. You had some water for a couple of hours. So everybody was just helping out. Like a community was built even stronger. Nowadays, with everything that we have and with the whole country kind of modernized and everything, I mean, we think we're living better. I'm not saying that that part of my life is better. I'm just talking about the community, about the people in general. People have turned their back on each other, like on the community itself. So this whole digital, like you and I are now like talking through a camera. You don't know me, I don't know you in a way.
Yeah.
Like we lost that physical touch and we lost that physical presence in general. So to come back to your question, it looked fun in the eyes of a kid because your mom and dad were always home and everybody was there and your brothers and friends and you would play outside. You would just like only when the sirens went off, you need to come in. Obviously, for me, I was blessed enough that nobody got killed in my close proximity, but it was a bad place to be. And definitely, we were scared at times. The bombings were maybe like a couple kilometers from my house, so all the windows cracked, for example. And I remember we were in the basement just seeing like how can it be fixed in the morning, like duct taping windows because you cannot buy other ones. Once it passed, we like rebuilt everything. But I mean, I don't know, in the eyes of a child, the most important thing is that you have your people that you look up to there close to you. So my father wasn't sent to war, my brothers weren't sent. So that's a lucky condition to be in. But in general, it was not a place to be for my father, especially because a little bit about my background, my family, and everything to build in that like time frame in those years. Especially because we were like Yugoslavia, your parents would know, but it was a communist country. So you need to change the mindset completely. You were going through a For a country, Yugoslavia was considered top 5, top 10 economies of the world. So it's huge. And now all of a sudden, everything broke down. And you need to change that mindset from a communist socialist regime. The difference between the Western world and our world here, even nowadays, if you have a job, especially something that is connected with government or whatever, just keep silent. You have a job, you have a steady income, don't complain, shut up. And it doesn't have that hustle mentality like there is in the West. So there's a huge gap and a huge difference there. So my father and my grandfather, when they started our family business, which I'm not a part of anymore, they started in 68, where if you're an entrepreneur, you're a public enemy pretty much. So if I would go through their stories, we would need hours to only talk about that because that's bravery right there. So yeah.
It's incredible what people go through, and I
Oh yeah.
remember experiencing the community as well. And since you talked about your family did start their business during communism, which is incredible, and a business that continues to be active. Is that correct? The family business still exists?
Yeah, my grandfather, he passed away now almost 15 years ago. He started it in 68. He was from a small city, village, call it whatever, called Požarevac. And back in those days, the only way to come to the capital, because I'm from Belgrade, you need to have an invite, like a license to enter pretty much the city. And he got deported multiple times. And he would go by foot to Belgrade, which is something like 150 kilometers away. And eventually, he stayed in this part of Belgrade called Zemun, had a small garage where he could sleep and work because his whole family was still in the village. And that's how it started from one place to another. Like half of the city was still in farmland and like marshlands and stuff like that. It was not as developed as it is now. And he started like that. My father joined him when he was, I think, 12 or 13 years old. You needed to grow up much faster back then. That's for sure. Eventually, he went through all of those crazy times. I mean, there was a golden era in late 70s, 80s, and then 90s, wars, sanctions, everything stopped. So we went through that as well. I believe then in the early 2000s that the family company had 20, 25 employees. And now we're in 2026. They have two older brothers. The oldest one is running the company. He started when he was maybe 25, 26. He joined. Once he finished his interesting story, he was studying in Canada exactly when the bombing started. And he wanted to flew back in, like to be with us. And my dad was like, no, stay there when things settle. The first ticket he managed to get was to Budapest. So he came into Budapest and then somehow migrated to Belgrade to join us. So now he is 47, 8. Sorry, Milan, if I gave you too much years. Yeah, he's born in 77, so I don't even know. Soon going to be 50. And now the company has 150 employees. So a
Amazing.
huge jump was made in the last 20 years. And I was a part of it up until 2019, 2020. And then I part ways because my middle brother is also in the family company. Everybody's in the family company in Sekni.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the interesting thing because you called yourself the black sheep and you decided to go through a different route. You obviously are an entrepreneur yourself and CEO of your own company. So, talk a little bit about when you discovered maybe that you knew this was not for you and that you had different dreams for your life.
I mean, as a male, you should be dragged into cars, engines, anything petrol, that type of stuff. And it's a pretty cool job to be in because we're like engine specialists. We rebuild engines for from cars to locomotives to whatever you can imagine that has an engine. We rebuild it. Simply that industry and the technology of rebuilding, in my head, it was pretty repetitive and it's like you live in a loop in a way. So there's no difference. Engine is an engine. It just depends on how many cylinders it has, or it's a V engine or a straight engine. I'm not going to go into technicalities and details. But what I realized is simply the same drive my brothers had. My middle brother, he's a mechanic and he always liked it from when he was a child. He was like given a screwdriver, whatever tools, and he always liked it. He was really skillful with his hands. He was like my dad, pretty much. My oldest brother is the one like he was educated a bit more to handle the business. He graduated in economics. So he knew how to handle a company pretty much. And I was like kind of always because I'm way younger than them. My middle brother is 7 years older and the oldest 12 years older than me. So I was always considered the kid. I believe up until I got my kids that I was still considered a kid pretty much. And I consider my oldest brother as my father in a way because he was much more present in my life than my dad was because my dad was working literally 15 hours a day.
Yeah.
And at one point, he realized First of all, my love for languages and how I can speak. And usually, when you speak with somebody from Eastern Europe, you can tell immediately. A majority of people that talk to me couldn't say immediately that I'm from Serbia or any other Eastern European country. I don't have that hard accent. So I was like, okay, I'm not interested in any of that. And I was always curious about other countries, about other cultures, about visiting, traveling. That was my first drive to go away from Serbia, not because it was bad for me here, not at all. It's only because of curiosity and want to meet other people, other cultures, other ways of thinking in a way. And eventually, because I went to a gymnasium as a high school, and if you know like the setup here, if you finish a gymnasium and you don't go to a university, pretty much you could have just finished elementary school. So after that, I needed to go on a university, but none of the universities here were the exact thing that I wanted to learn about at that time. And I was like, okay, what's the most broad thing that I can study that I could leverage abroad? So I started just like sending out letters to all sorts of different business schools around Europe because they were pretty expensive. And I came up with this letter where I wouldn't like to even share it with you because I didn't demonize my family. I was just like, we're really struggling. My dad is this, my father, like brothers are like, I don't know, alcoholic. I made the whole thing up so that somebody would give me some leverage. And eventually I was like, decline, 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 declined. And a couple of universities actually, okay, called me in for an interview and he got a couple of scholarship opportunities, like 80-90% scholarship. He comes from Serbia, he's helping out and stuff. He looks bright. And I chose London in the end. I mean, if you talk heritage, it doesn't go much bigger than that. Like London is kind of a crossroads of the whole world, let's put it that way. So I went there, like, studied Bachelor in Business Administration, which is pretty much a little bit of everything in business, right? So you can finish that and you can get hired anywhere. It's pretty much operations, admin work, and stuff like that, but you have the fundamentals of business. And then after that, kind of shifted my mindset into something that is I realized I like the most, which is human psychology and consumer behavior. And I realized that at the moment because I grew up in that family business and you have a production facility and majority of the people are craftsmen, machinists and stuff like that. And I was like, there is no way, how can I make this pretty? You're not doing advertising for some cool brand like Red Bull or something like that. You really need to be imaginative in order to get this up and running, to have the numbers and that whole industry and everything. And I was always talking to my brothers because I'm that first generation of Instagram. If you remember back then when it started, I was in London and my first post was slice of pizza from a Pizza Hut in somewhere in some village in UK. And I was like, okay, this is going to be fun. We're going to be able to tell stories for imagery. So when I came back, eventually, when I graduated, they were like, okay, you're going to come back to the company and let's manage everything together. But I was still not given the opportunity to actually showcase my knowledge and where this is headed. If I go down that lane, it could be a lengthy talk. So you should ask me like a sub question. I mean, to point on your question, I realized when I liked it the most is because of the challenge that brings in with such an industry that is such a niche to
Hmm.
say that you cannot visualize it so easily because there is a difference between like engine rebuilding and showcasing luxury cars. I'm not going to do a review on a Porsche. So, yeah, I need to get my hands dirty. I need to show people what actually makes them think. Why do they even like these things? So, that was the biggest challenge and simply changing the mindset, which was like design doesn't matter, brand doesn't matter. You just need to do the work and get paid, and that's it. So, there's your answer there.
Did you start Krow Studios in Serbia?
No, actually, this is Krow Studios 2.0. I didn't mention that. I already had this thing that I started in New York with a colleague from my university years in London, this American guy called Matt. And we started an architectural visualization studio in New York,
Interesting.
Manhattan. Yeah. I mean, I was into 3D renderings back then. As he said, like visualizing something that is non existent, right? So, architects, whatever building is being built, you need to showcase what is it going to look like. And back in the days, those 3D renders are not like now. Now you have AI and you can visualize it in an instant. Back then, it was like really good money. And the AR, this like not VR, but AR is kind of in the middle between virtual reality, augmented reality. So you would have a headset and then you can go showcase in a showroom and stuff like yeah. So we managed to like land a couple of clients, like really solid clients from Hong Kong and from the US, like two kids from one from New York, one from Serbia, just by having a good enough business plan, good enough pitch deck, good enough work to showcase because I have a lot of like my best man is in that like 3D rendering space. And I connected to some other people. I connected another friend in sales. So we started doing that. And the only reason why that thing didn't work out is because I was dragged back into the family company because they needed me. They realized that something
Mm.
needs to change in terms of that whole digital world and marketing in general. Because I didn't mention that actually my master's degree in Belgium was a master in marketing management and digital marketing as a specialty. How do you call that? Like specificity, whatever. So I simply moved away from Krow Studios 1.0, moved to MR, stayed there for a couple of years, and then Krow Studios 2.0 actually just started in October last year. Before that, I was working for other agencies, for other brands, before I realized that I should be doing this on my own and make my own team.
Yeah. Did you ever think you were going to go back to Serbia? Or did you think you were going to stay in the States or somewhere else?
No, I visited the States a lot of times. I simply never clicked with it, or I simply didn't find a state. I've been to New York at least like 5, 6 times. Every single time I would go, I would hate it more for some reason. And other parts, I don't know, Chicago, Boston, I like them better, but never went to the West Side. So maybe that would change something. I don't know. But to be honest, I was seeing myself in London. But because of my background, because of my Serbian heritage, they didn't really want us back then there, and I was not like a molecular biologist, so to say that they need to keep me. I was another business grad. That's the reason why I moved to Belgium, where I actually started working, and I ended up in that corporate world that I was honed for, that I grew teeth for to become a shark, to be really resilient and everything. But then after 6 months, I realized that I don't want to be that guy because simply the way how you need to treat other people in a competitive corporate environment is not something that I value. And my moral values are much higher than that. And I was like, this is not for me. It will be good money and everything, but it's just like, it's not all about the money. So I was then called back by my family, so I was like, okay, let's try it out. And I was given the chance finally to show them, to prove my worth. And that's
Yeah.
the reason why I moved back. And I mean, never doubted my decision afterwards. I'm glad that I did.
And it's changed so much. People that haven't been to Belgrade should go visit. It's absolutely amazing. And after all these years, now London has flights to Belgrade like every day. Like it's really easy
Multiple
to
times a
find.
day.
Yeah, multiple times a day, which is
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
So, what was some of the hardest things that you had to endure as you were working with your family, coming back after learning what you did and coming back to a business that was so established? Were there any challenges with the vision that you had and trying to change your father or your brother's mindset around certain things?
That's actually a really good question. So when you are 25, like 26-year-old, and you're trying to tell people who built a 150-person company that they're missing something, it's not the best place to be in. So the thing I had to kind of learn first was that I wasn't going to win the argument by just being right. I had to win it by showing results they simply couldn't dismiss in a way. So I kind of stopped debating and started proving what I can do. So I built that MR Engines, the name of the company, the digital presence pretty much from zero. So I showed them what it could do, and I simply wanted to let the evidence speak because we were present on a lot of automotive fairs locally, and then we started going into Germany, into France, into those like fairs which were pretty costly, not gonna lie, to be present there. And whenever we would go there, people would start approaching us and showing on the phone, like, is this you guys? And I would just like look at them like, you see, like they know us. They resonate. They know the colors. They know that logo. Let's
Yeah.
start from there. Let's start from the basics, pretty much. Because beforehand, the biggest marketing expense of MR was pretty business cards. And that's some flyers, and that's pretty much it. The thing is that I was living across three completely different cultures. So one in the UK, one in Belgium, in Serbia, and in general, that multicultural environment kind of shaped me in a specific way. So that experience that I had there kind of shaped how I lead even my team now. I don't tell my team what to do just based on what other people said it should be done that way. I mean, since I have this experience of different environments and different cultures, I led by that even in my family company because they were pretty stubborn on the ways of Serbia and on the ways of Yugoslavia because it's all the similar. Doesn't matter if it's Bosnia, Croatia, Serbia, Montenegro, everybody here is the same. And we're the smartest people in the world, just so you know. So that's that like bulletproof
Sounds like
version of what do you
Balkan
know?
mentality. Yeah.
There you go. We're so badass, which is like in a way that's not humbling at all. And I cannot relate to that because the moment my eyes opened is when I crossed the border and started listening to other people. It doesn't matter if it's from the West, from the East, I learned something from everybody. So, how I made it happen is simply through being silent, working diligently, and sorting out one piece after another to assemble the whole puzzle, to assemble that digital presence online. Now, our numbers are crazy good. We have even started a YouTube channel, which we grew in the first month over 5,000 subscribers, which is
Amazing.
amazing for 1 month in Serbia. And my plan for this year is we need to reach at least 20, 30K. But my preparation for it was like, okay, I came to my brother and I'm like, this is the budget. This is the studio that we have to make. This is the gear that you need. This is the producer. This is going to be the cinematographer, the lighting, everything. I have set it up, everything. Our middle brother is going to be the host because they will only trust somebody from the family, or if you want to bring another actor, they can pretty much blackmail you after a couple of seasons because we're going to be successful. He was like, okay, how much money do you need? And I'm like, this is the
Yeah.
amount, let's go.
Yeah.
So we were preparing for a year and a half for this launch. And when it launched, it was better than I expected. So now they're pushing me, let's make more content. I'm like, okay, we didn't prepare for this. You weren't asking for comments and likes. We are just asking for our presence on YouTube as well, because on Instagram, on TikTok, on Facebook, we have like, I don't know, 60, 70, 80K subscribers. Because I'm not anymore there, I kind of assembled a team, made that marketing team, social media managers, and everything. I stepped out. So I'm just like there hovering on top and sometimes simply giving guidance, and that's pretty much it. But maybe that's my biggest win, the one for the family business, because I
Yeah.
kind of proved my worth in a way. Every single client that I close after then now for Krow doesn't come even close to that like inner feeling of simply, I don't know, gratitude, humbleness, you call it whatever, but it really feels good. So
Yeah. And it's so
finally I'm
interesting.
worth it.
Yeah, because you're the youngest and also the one that went away, kind of came back. So it's an interesting story. And then also, like you said, previous generations built something. There's a lot of tradition there, there's a lot of establishment. So coming in not only with like, hey, we could do things differently, but also bringing these ideas from maybe other places that couldn't have been easy, especially at 25, like you said. I could just
Oh
see,
yeah.
like, yeah, what do you know? I could just imagine the conversation sometimes. So, how did that then inspire you to want to create your business 2.0 with your clients? I'm really curious about who you work with and what you've been able to do since you left the family business.
Simply because I didn't want to be that kid that had everything sorted out. I didn't want to say, like, you took the easy route. You have a family business, you're now a director of one of your franchises, whatever, when you pretty much have everything sorted out. So there wasn't a challenge there anymore. I mean, there will be a need for that business for at least like up until we're alive. Electric cars are not gonna go overnight and simply overhaul the whole planet. So it's not gonna happen. Still, you're gonna have like mines, you're gonna have like agricultural machines that cannot work on electrical power that easily. So it wasn't a part of me trying to prove to everybody that I can do it on my own. It was just like a matter of challenge. I overgrown it. I didn't see the next step in it. I need a different challenge simply. It was like with university, nobody pushed me to go abroad and study. My dad told me when I finished my elementary school, just finish some mechanical school and join the business. And I was like, yeah, but I don't want to do that. He's like, okay, oh, you're going to be a scholar. You're going to have a doctor's degree. I'm like, Dad, I don't know if I'm going to go all that way. But yeah, I didn't tell you one like fun anecdote how I went to England actually, because as a father of three boys, the first thing you get when you're 18 years old is a car. And I remember I sold my car after 6 months by myself, not asking my dad.
Oh
And he
gosh.
was like, I remember I came to the office. I'm like, hey, Dad, I sold the car. And he was reading newspapers. And he just looked at me and you did what? My oldest brother was sitting at the boss table and he was just like, he is, you know?
Yeah.
And he just asked me, okay, and where's the money? And I'm like, I paid for my university because I need to pay that first installment and the rest you're gonna get the scholarship and everything. And he's like, what university? And I said, like, I got accepted to this London university, like Holt University in London. And he put his glasses down. I was like getting ready to get like beaten up or whatever. He just put the newspaper down. He just looked at me and said, like, you really want this bad. I
Mm,
just looked him in the eyes and I was like, there is nothing I wanted more than this.
mm.
And he's like, okay, if that's the case, we're going to support you. So they supported me as much as they could at that specific time because it was a hard time in those specific couple of years because there was this huge truck that got stolen in Italy, like packed with engines that we did. So it set us back a couple of years. And he's like,
Oh
this
my,
is the worst time this could happen. So I needed to even grow older faster. So I started doing student jobs, some illegal parties, you name them, whatever, like rave parties. I did everything just to stay in London. It was fun. But yeah.
oh my gosh. There, you have a
Yeah.
lot of stories, I'm sure,
Yeah, I
from
have a
that.
colorful life, I can say that, yeah.
So tell me more about your business now. Who are the main clients that you work with? I looked at your website and it looks like you've got a lot of different types of clients in different industries. So tell us a little bit more about it.
I specialize in e-commerce, in D2C, which stands for direct to consumer, which is pretty much online presence of whatever product or service you might have. So I serve clients that have e-commerce businesses in any sort of industries and niches you can imagine: health and wellness, technology, supplements, you name it. I think that I've covered them all so far in my 7 now years of experience in this specific environment. And it wasn't the case in the beginning because when I quit my family business, I didn't know what I was doing because I was never a part of it. I'm in digital marketing. I'm not in e-com. It's a completely different beast. If you talk about traditional advertising, you probably know about like TV advertising, newspaper, print, and stuff like that. And this is such a different beast because it's so fast paced, especially nowadays with all the social media platforms, all the different approaches that how we're all targeted. I was simply like, okay, this is so cool. This is actually really interesting and extremely fast paced, what I like, because I'm pretty all over the place. And I started working with this agency called Atkins back in the days. And I remember my boss then was like, I like the energy of this guy. He doesn't know much, but we will see how it goes. Eventually ending up filling her own shoes because she was fired eventually, even though I learned so much from her, but it moved really fast because it really digested all that information and that environment so much. I even got obsessed at some certain point. I read all the books I possibly could. I followed all the important people from the industry as I possibly could. And eventually, what I realized is that simply in this industry, what is missing is systemizing. And that's how we met actually
Yeah.
from the same program. And I was like sold by systems. And I'm like, okay, that's actually what I need because I'm a pretty chaotic guy. I need somebody to structure me. But to go back to Crow, it's yeah, specializing in making ads for those e-commerce businesses, specifically for Meta, but also for other social media channels, for TikTok, for Snapchat. Like now you have, I don't know if you heard like apps like AppLovin. Trust me, there are a lot of things that even I am like figuring out on a weekly basis because this industry is moving so fast. When I was instructed to go a little bit more towards LinkedIn, I was always like, LinkedIn? Seriously? That's like, yeah, it's not really my audience. But then I realized a lot of business owners are also trying to figure it out. A lot of businesses have amazing products. They simply don't know how to approach the market about it because TV advertising is too expensive. Print advertising, if you want like a billboard by the highway, it doesn't cost the same. And these ads are kind of, you can do the math of how much money it's making and it's scalable. So you can always like make like 100 more billboards around the city, but you cannot really do the math around it, how much it helped your business. And here we have this fast-paced environment where you're making ads that are changing on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, simply because you're testing different pockets of audiences, different user personas, different demographics, different emotions. So it's a pretty complex operation, even though it's served so like simply to you. There's a lot of thinking behind everything that you see on Instagram once you're scrolling or on Facebook. It's such a sophisticated tool. It's like crazy, but it holds a monopoly. So Facebook is definitely the number one player in advertising, passed down.
I have done more Instagram purchasing this last year, and I'm like, they will not leave me alone until I get
Mm-hmm.
the falsetto to regulate my vagus nerve. I will keep
Yep.
seeing the ads everywhere I go, and it's like incredible. And so you studied, you said also human psychology. There's so much that goes into how we buy. What are you seeing
Oh
in
yeah.
terms of any changes in how people buy, or in like, is that impacting how you're doing ads? Any new learnings that
Oh,
you have?
yes. First of all, even birds in my industry know that first 2 to 3 seconds of every single ad is crucial. If you don't hone that sort of called hook instantly, the rest of your ad doesn't matter at all. So what you're trying to trigger is that like you don't start with a sell. You start with the problem because people need to connect immediately to what you're trying to talk about. There are different types of approaches you can take to every certain individual based on their age, their environment, their purchasing stage. There's like warm audience, cold audience, different segments of the funnel, you know, top, middle, bottom funnel of the ads. When you see something and I see that you resonated with as something that I want to serve you a middle of the funnel ad that is going to be educating you more of what you saw in the first one. And if you're keep scrolling and still keep giving us a couple more seconds on that specific ad, I'm seeing that and I'm trying to, okay, what's going to make her close for me? And I then hit you with 30% off, 50% off, or try now, risk free, 60 days. What do you have to lose and stuff like that? So advertising as an art form didn't change for 100 years now. That's how I see it. The snake potion back in the days, it's simply how you deliver. And because people try to make it complex, it's actually not. The more simple you get it, the higher chance you're going to get a good result. The only thing that changes the medium, it's this. This is your biggest leverage right now because back in the day, you wanted to look like Marilyn Monroe. You wanted to buy a Ford car, and it kind of evolved and evolved. It's simply now we're on the other side of the curve completely where you're simply so much bombarded and the competition is so high that you need to be so original, but in a world where everything is already kind of figured out, how can you be original? So it's more about creative testing and listening. It's more analysis than actual ad production, because if you're just like pumping out ads randomly, it's not going to solve anything. If you don't know that problem, that agitation that people have, and the solution that you can serve them, if you connect those dots as clearly as possible, there's your gold mine. As I always say to my clients, your winning ads are always in your comments and in your reviews. I mean, you use Amazon probably, I mean, on a
Oh,
weekly basis, let's put it that way, right?
yeah.
And always when you're checking something new, you go to that for
A
reviews,
review.
right?
Yeah.
And you go to the filters and you select the top 5, top 4. And then you realize a lot of them are, you have a lot of bots there. But on the other side, the ones that are unique, and then you select, for example, the ones that have video or that have photo, but those were also incentivized to do that
Yeah.
because they got something for free. Now you
Right.
know that, but majority of the people that are not in the industry don't know that. And to explain it like plainly, Meta is like an amplifier to everything around your business. So you have your Amazon reviews, your Meta reviews, in website reviews, and all of these other people and characters, and now especially with AI, you can data mine all of that and look for certain patterns that people replicate. And in those patterns is exactly where maybe your next winning hook is, or your winning ad in general, because people speak the language of the problem that they're trying to solve. And that's exactly what you're trying to do with the ad. So yeah, that's your recipe right there.
Oh my gosh. I know. And even if I know this, it's like I still get hooked.
Yeah. Yeah.
It still happens. This is interesting. So, what's the next step? Where do you see your business going? Is there a new level or any changes that you see for it?
I mean, I would still like to serve. I would still like to be a service as Krow Studio for other brands to like, I get high on success of others. When a brand comes and they're making, I don't know, 50, 60, 80, 100K a month, and then we move them to a million a month, that's the high that I want because you showcase that you can. Even when I go on client calls, I always say, if I don't feel the brand and if I don't see that I can actually help, I would say that openly. It's not always about the money. Even now, when you know that from our calls, I get a lot of referrals. I don't do that much like cold traffic or whatever. I don't do ads, even though I make ads for others. I mean, I would still like to stay there and like connect with other businesses, but the end goal, I would like to have my own brand. I don't know what it's going to be. Maybe it's going to be these headphones or who knows. I would like to have my own e-commerce shops and implement everything that I've learned from the industry, from other clients into that one. That's the next step, maybe.
I love that. So, if folks want to work with you and maybe just to even see if they would be one of those clients you want to work with, what is the best way that they can get a hold of you?
LinkedIn, email marko@krowstudios.com or our website, krowstudios.com. It's pretty visual. It's pretty easy to navigate. Everything can be found there pretty much. The forums, the book a call, and everything is there. So yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I love the case studies, and I know you have a newsletter. Actually, I'm really impressed with your LinkedIn. I think recently you did a post and really just talked about walking people through how to create the hook, like what it goes into creating a good ad. So there's a lot of value and service that you
I
provide. So
hope
people, yeah, I should definitely follow you. There's a final question that I ask everyone, Marco. What does it mean to you to live the width of your life?
there's this project that I'm working on right now, which is I'm making an overlander, which is this like off-road Jeep. I have two kids, two small kids, 2 and 4 boys,
Oh,
and I would like to have more time to go and spend in the woods, in the mountains, sleeping in a tent on top of some crazy scenery, being able to travel as much as possible. I simply enjoy that more than anything else. So having more time and staying healthy, those are the two things I believe majority of people that join these calls with you would agree with me. Simply get out of that hamster wheel as much as possible, live the life because it's long enough. I mean, I don't know when I turned 36, to be honest. I'm still 20 in my head. So it moves really fast, especially now with the kids and everything. So to answer the question, trying to free up as much of my time as possible so I can enjoy the things that matter in life.
so good. Well, I just wish you continued success. I'm so grateful that we met through Founder OS and hopefully
Likewise,
continue. And when I come to Belgrade, I think definitely we should get together for coffee or some lunch. It would be amazing.
that's already agreed upon. So and we have a recording of it. So we will meet
There
for
you
sure in
go.
person.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Marco. Have an amazing day.
Thank you, Neta. Likewise.